You know the scene. A late-night high school prank. It feels like a rite of passage for some. But what happens when that so-called harmless fun goes horribly wrong? Today we're going to dig into a case where a prank, just some toilet paper, set off a chain reaction that ended in a teacher's tragic death and put 5 young people in serious legal jeopardy.
But before we get into any of the legal stuff, it's so important to remember the human cost here. The victim was Jason Hughes, a 40-year-old teacher. His school district statement really drives it home. He wasn't just an educator, he was a husband and a father. This was a massive loss for his family and his entire community.
So, how did this all happen? Well, the timeline is tragically simple. A group of 5 decides to roll Mr. Hughes' yard. He comes outside to see what's going on, and they panic. They scramble to get away in 2 cars, and in that chaos, Mr. Hughes trips, falls into the street, and is hit by one of the vehicles. He later died from those injuries.
To really get our heads around this, we're going to break it all down. We'll look at how the prank turned tragic, what the exact charges are, and then tackle the big question: how can all 5 people be held responsible? We'll also explore what might happen in the courtroom, and finally, get to the haunting detail that makes this such a powerful cautionary tale.
All right, first up, let's take a closer look at that moment where everything went so wrong.
So who was involved here? The victim, as we know, was teacher Jason Hughes. The person driving the truck that hit him was Jaden Ryan Wallace. And then there were 4 other participants with him: Elijah Tate Owens, Aiden Hucks, Anna Catherine Luke, and Ariana Cruz. And it's really crucial to remember, all 5 of them were there from the start.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about the legal fallout. What happens when the justice system gets involved? Let's unpack the specific charges they're all facing.
Now, this is where it gets really interesting from a legal perspective. Look how the charges are split. The driver, Jaden Ryan Wallace, he's facing the heaviest charges, for sure. First-degree vehicular homicide and reckless driving. But, and this is the key, all 5 of them, every single one, is charged with criminal trespassing and littering. That distinction is the whole ballgame.
So, what in the world is vehicular homicide? It's important to know this isn't like a murder charge where you have to prove someone intended to kill. No, this is about causing a death because you are operating a vehicle in a really reckless or negligent way. And that first-degree part, that suggests the prosecution thinks the driver's actions were exceptionally reckless.
And what about that charge that all of them are facing? Criminal trespass. Legally, it's pretty simple. You're on someone's property when you're not supposed to be. And that charge, as minor as it might seem, is the legal anchor that connects every single person to what happened that night, whether they were behind the wheel or not. And that brings us to, honestly, the trickiest legal question in this whole thing, this idea of group responsibility. I mean, this is the question that probably popped into your head, right? It seems so simple. One driver, one tragic accident. So why are 5 people getting charged? How does the law justify that?
Well, the answer is buried in a really important legal principle. Basically, when you decide to commit a crime with a group, even a small crime like trespass, the law says you can be held responsible for the consequences. The prosecution is going to argue that when you're caught trespassing, a panicked escape, and maybe even an accident, well, that's a foreseeable result of your actions.
Okay, so let's game this out a bit. Let's imagine we're in the courtroom and look at the arguments both sides are probably going to make.
So, on one side, the defense for the 4 passengers is likely going to say, hey, we weren't driving. We had no control. We never wanted anyone to get hurt. But the prosecution's comeback is powerful. They'll argue that the group's decision to trespass and then run away created this incredibly dangerous situation in the first place. The death, they'll say, happened because of that initial crime.
You know, when it comes to sentencing, it's not just a simple formula. A judge is going to look at a lot of different things. And one detail here could be a really big deal. Reports say the group actually tried to help Mr. Hughes after he was hit. That action could be a huge factor for the defense, showing remorse and maybe leading to lighter sentences, at least for the non-drivers.
And finally, there's a piece to this story that makes it just an absolutely gut-wrenching cautionary tale. It's all about the timing.
Get this. This is the tragic, ironic twist. Just days before this fatal night, the school district sent out a specific warning about prom season pranks. They told students point blank to avoid pranks that could hurt people or damage property. It was a warning that just tragically went completely ignored.
When you boil it all down, this whole thing is just a devastating example of how thin that line is between a prank and a crime. What started as a joke in just a few seconds spiraled into something with permanent, life-shattering consequences for absolutely everyone involved.
And that really leaves us with a tough question to chew on, right? It's so easy to get swept up in the moment when you're with a group. But a case like this forces us to ask, when you're part of a group action, at what exact moment does their responsibility become your own?